Acton. Okay, there we go. All right. If y'all just bear with me a second, I'm having to click admit for each person. So I want to make sure nobody gets left out. But I'm so glad you guys are all here. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're just jumping on, you're welcome to leave your video on if you want, but you can turn off your video and hit the mute button throughout unless you want to pop on and ask something. And then there's also the chat box. If you have any questions throughout that I don't answer, you can feel free to throw your question into the chat. If you haven't met me before, or if we haven't chatted previously to this meeting, my name is Sydney Loper. I am the co-founder of Acton Mobile along with my husband, Ryan. I'm so glad you guys are tuning in. Anybody who just jumped on, we are recording this for others to watch that aren't able to make it. Just want to make sure you know that. And if you want to mute your screen throughout the presentation, and unless you want to pop on and ask me anything, you're more than welcome to do so. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull my notes out and I'm going to share my screen with you guys. If at any point you can't see the presentation or you need something, feel free to pop on and ask, or like I said, you can put it in the chat box. But okay, so I'm going to click this to present for everybody. You can see it a little bit bigger on your screen. I hope that you're able to see that instead of my video. Let me admit a few more. Okay, so just bear with me just a second. I don't want anybody to get left out over there. Okay, I gotta leave that screen up. Okay, so welcome. If you just jumped on, feel free to hit the mute button unless you want to ask me a question, you're welcome to, or you can throw it in the chat. I'm pulling up our presentation now. I'm so glad you guys are tuning in. I'm so excited to share all of this with you. My husband, Ryan, and I are very, very excited because we just signed the lease to our space yesterday. So it's officially official. And I will fill you in a little bit more about where that is and how that can work for you in just a little bit. But we're so delighted that you are here and you want to learn more. I am going to try to tell you as many things, Acton Academy, as I can without completely overwhelming you. I went through this yesterday and it's about a 45-minute presentation. So if you can't watch the whole thing, don't feel bad. Like I said, I'm recording it and I'll be happy to send it out to anyone if you aren't able to watch the whole thing. But I really want everyone who's here to get a feel of what exactly this is and our reason for doing it. So, and like I said, I'm so thankful that you've tuned in and that you are interested, because a community of like-minded people is what we are searching for to make this successful for our children and your children. So at Acton Academy, our mission is that each person who enters our doors will find a calling that will change the world. And we truly believe that. Every child has a genius within, a God-given calling that they are capable of finding. And we really strive to let the children know that that belief from us is there for them. So a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about is the why, the what, and the how of Acton Academy. So I'm trying to find, it's a little bit too big on my screen. There we go. To flip to the next. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit about us if you haven't met my husband and I before through our previous business, or haven't been chatting with us about Acton already. I am going to tell you a little bit of my background before we jump in. So my name is Sydney, and this is my husband, Ryan, and our 3 children. And we have opened a local business here before for children called Play Cafe. It was on Old Shell Road. We were open for a couple years before the pandemic hit, and we were an indoor play and party venue for children 5 and under. So we do have that experience, but me as the owner and director of Acton, I have been teaching for the last 8 years here. Before that, I was actually in public relations. I grew up in Mississippi, and being a teacher and seeing the anxiety that my students were fueled with over tests and grades and homework and comparison of each other really took a toll on my heartstrings and stressed me out. And then when my oldest son, Landry, who will be 7 this summer, when we were trying to decide where we wanted him to be, I've taught in both private and public here, and he's been in a few different schools as well. And we just weren't finding what we thought he needed. And being a teacher, seeing children a little bit older and all the anxiety they were fueled with really made us want to do something different for them. So we actually set out to find some untraditional education, and Acton we discovered, and we were really ready to pick up and move to the original campus in Austin, Texas. When we found out about this, we were so all in, head over heels. This is what our kids have to have. This is where they have to grow up. This is what they have to experience. And then we realized that you could apply to open an Acton in your own town. And one of the requirements was to have had a business before. So again, very thankful for Play Cafe for giving us that opportunity. So I am going to jump into the why. So why are we reimagining school in the first place? If you are here, you probably have a reason for wanting something different, or if your child is just beginning to be school age, seeing that this could be something for them. But I want to take a second and stop and look at a few different fields of the world and how they've changed over the last 100 years. So I want you to kind of have that in your mind frame. We're going to look at medical, communications, and technology. So think about the medical field just as a broad thing. In the last 100 years, how much has it changed? So, this is 50 years ago. There's just been tons of new ways of doing things and advancements in technology, which we're all so thankful for. It's grown and changed so much if you really look at it. If you look in the field of communications, it is drastically changed to the way we communicate with each other. You can see here, 100 years ago, we had magazines and street corners, and word of mouth was the only way to communicate with each other besides letters in the mail. And then if you look at, 50 years later, you can see that it changed also, again, a lot. So communications has advanced a lot, and not only in the last 100 years, but especially in the last 20 years. If we look at technology, it's really crazy how far we've come. I'm sorry, this is jumping the wrong way. Okay, so in the last 20 years, there's been lots and lots of advancement, right? Okay, look at the workforce. If you think about where we started in the Industrial Revolution and going forward, think about the workforce now. It's a lot of collaborative, community-based places. You can work from home, you can work on your computer, you can work anywhere. All of these fields have advanced and changed and grown with our world so much. So much has changed, and so many things are different. But if you take a look at education, it's not exactly the same. So here's 100 years ago. Here's 50 years ago. And here is, I'm sorry, excuse me. I have to admit one more person. Okay, so here's education. Here it goes. Here's the 2000s. And then now, how much is different? Take a look at these pictures and see how many features of school you can find that are consistent across all three. It looks a lot alike, right? There's not a big drastic change and difference from 100 years ago or a little bit more to now. But look at all those other fields that we saw and we discussed how drastically they've changed and advanced. So why isn't school? So change is the word that we're focusing on. There needs to be change. Education just hasn't changed much. And I want you to take a second. We're going to watch a small clip from this video. It's a longer video, but we're only going to watch about 5 minutes. And when I watched this, it reassured kind of what I was feeling, but I didn't understand or know the why behind it. So this video is going to kind of go through the history of education, how it came to be, why we learn what we learn, and the way we learn it, and how you can recognize it hasn't changed much. So just about, and then we'll move on to the how and the what of Acton. So just take a look at this for a second.
The last significant change in the way we educated our kids occurred around 124 years ago. It was the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Most kids were raised on farms, and jobs were plentiful and predictable. Then in 1843, an educator from Massachusetts decides to visit Prussia on his honeymoon, where he witnesses a brand new type of education. Up until that time, education primarily consisted of smart people sitting around talking to other smart people. But after the Prussians were embarrassed in the Napoleonic Wars in the 1800s, this Prussian decides to institute a new type of education for every German boy from 7 to 14 years old, which results in a more fit, more organized, more obedient army. Among his many reforms was this idea: to divide up instruction according to age, ability, and subject matter. Strange as it seems today, this had never been done before. This idea of teaching math in one room, science in another room, language skills in yet another was totally new. Horace Mann witnesses this new educational model and he's stunned. Inspired by what he sees, he brings these educational ideas back to the US, where it captures the attention of these men. Just like the Prussians, who were anxious to develop more obedient troops, these fathers of the Industrial Revolution were desperate to transform our nation of disorganized farm laborers into trained, efficient workers for their factory and assembly line jobs.
We divide the day up in high schools into bits of time, into 40 or 50-minute blocks typically, and then we ring bells and people start to shuffle around the building and do something else. That's an organizational device. It's not an educational principle. And it is, in broad sweeps, a system that resembles a factory culture.
If you built a factory in upstate New York and another along the Ohio River, you desperately needed these workers to behave similarly, to know the same kinds of things. If high school graduates in Ohio could quote Shakespeare, but students in New York couldn't even write their own name, it was difficult to build a standard set of factories which utilized both sets of workers. That's when it was decided to form a committee called the Committee of 10. The committee was tasked with coming up with a standard set of subjects every kid should know.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics, and that it should be earth science. They came up with this whole trajectory calculus, and a lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 120 years ago, 124 years ago.
Back in 1892, the Committee of 10 designed our nation's curriculum, and for the most part, it has not changed.
The biggest employer in Baltimore 50 years ago was Bethlehem Steel Company. You could actually drop out of high school 50 years ago, join the steel union, get a perfectly average job, earning a perfectly average wage, which would entitle you to get a perfectly average mortgage, to buy a perfectly average house, with a perfectly average yard, to have 2.0 perfectly average kids, who would go to a wonderful, perfectly average public school. You could have a perfectly average retirement and have a perfectly average funeral. That is no longer the case.
The economy that we created over the course of the 20th century was an economy that needed a large number of moderately skilled people who could do the 3 R's and who could follow pretty simple instructions. As we head deeper into the 21st century, I really don't think that's the case anymore, yet our educational system still seems to be focused on turning out people with that same relatively small set of skills. My fear is that they're heading into a society and an economy and a workforce that doesn't value those skills very much anymore. And I think we need to take a good hard look and figure out what kinds of people, what kinds of skills are demanded in the technologically extraordinary society and economy that we're creating.
Over 100 years ago, the United States went from one-room schoolhouses to the robust industrial model we have now. It was a transformation that was nothing short of miraculous. Perhaps it's time for another transformation.
Okay, so.
Okay, so that really tees up the film.
Just one second.
I hope you get a sense. I mean, I didn't direct it, but it is absolutely exceptional. We then though go
I
into there's a
can post the link to this video in case it was lagging or stalled for anybody. Let me get, while it's waiting to go to the next screen. Okay, here we go. So, you know, our case for change is to see the leap in motivation and outcomes that students deserve. We must engineer a new design. So to be clear, we are not trying to improve upon the current model. We are creating an entirely new model, an entirely different way of educating the next generation. So you can see from that video, I hope it, you know, struck a chord with you because it did with me. The longer that children are in that system, the more bored they become, the less engaged they are, and the less prepared for the real world, the 21st century world that we're living in, they are. And if that scares you, the fact that we're trying to make something totally new, then this might not be the environment for you and your family. And that's okay. This is definitely not for everybody. It's a completely different, it's a mindset shift. But this is what gets us fired up and fueled up. And this is what excites us. So if you are interested, and we definitely want to bring you along for the journey, but I want to explain that. And also, I do not want to give any slack to teachers because, like I said, I've been a teacher for the last 8 years. My mom was a teacher for 40 years. Both of her parents were teachers. I have a huge respect for teachers and all that they do. But what's asked of them and what's expected in today's standard traditional education model, whether it's private or public, is just not. You can see where it hasn't changed in the last 100 years. You can see how everything around us is changing and improving and advancing, and education is completely stalled and exactly almost the same as it was 100+ years ago. So this is our motivator. This is the why that Acton is around and invented and here, and the education renovation is happening, and we are jumping on at the forefront of it, and we are excited to bring it here for you guys. And this is what our passion is. So now I want to explain to you, so what is it, what does that mean? So what does that look like? It's not letting me get down to the bottom of the screen to be able to go on to the next page. So hang with me just a sec. Okay, so you can see the current education is very teacher driven, instructor at the front, children following directions. And until I was shown a different way, I didn't think any differently, because of course, as a teacher myself, that's all I've known. That's the way I was raised. That's what I've been doing. That's what's common to me. But you know, it's the same subjects. Not many of those used in our daily life. How many times have you said, when will I ever use this in real life? And you don't. They don't. They're not. So why is it that we are putting such emphasis on memorization and facts and passing tests when that's not developing them into what they need for the real world? So it's going the opposite way. What does that mean, and what do we believe? We believe that every child is a genius that can find a God-given calling to change the world. We believe in instilling the love of learning back into kids. If you, and the reason why kind of we jumped on this when we did is because my oldest is the kindergarten age, and having taught kindergarten for a few years, and my mom having taught kindergarten for all of her teaching years, that's really the spot where we see the spark stop at the end of kindergarten. And when you jump into first grade, kindergarten teachers like myself know, okay, the parents have to understand that first grade is a huge jump from kindergarten, and there's going to be so much demand and so much pressure and so many more tests and so many things that they're responsible for, and the love of learning, the curiosity and their little spark in their eyes dulls down and it's gone. And having taught second and third and fifth, like it's not there. Their hearts are filled with anxiety and stress and tests and grades and homework, and that spark and that love of learning is not there. It's just, can I memorize these things? Can I pass the test? Can I compare to my peers and make good grades and make an A on the next test? And that's kind of where their mind is. So for Acton, or especially with our elementary studios, we really focus on instilling the love of learning and the desire to be curious and creative in them first before moving forward in middle school. And we believe in using interactive 21st century technology to do that. So these are the things we say goodbye to. Homework, not a thing at Acton. We believe that after being somewhere for 8 hours a day, the last thing a child or an adult wants to do is go home and do more work. So, you know, as a grown-up, if we're working our jobs for 8 hours a day, are we expected to come home and work another 3 hours at night because someone told us to? No. So why are we expecting our kids to do that? So homework, no. Tests, not a thing. We do not have tests at Acton Academy. And some people think, well, what in the world? How do you not have tests? Students are tested at Acton to show growth at the beginning and end of the year, but to them, it's not, hey, you're going to take a test and let's study all these things. It's just a random one day. They have a piece of paper and a pencil with a bucket of candy and said, oh, we're going to do this challenge today. And they show what they know. And then at the end of the year. So there is a way to see the growth, but it's not something that's part of our community. For kindergartners that are learning to read and write, how is reading handled with the self-learning, self-taught method? I'm reading something from the chat. Okay, the question is for kindergartners that are learning to read and write, how is reading handled with the self-learning, self-taught model? Okay, so with our with all of the students, reading and math are core skills time of the day, which depending on age is anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours a day. And that is individual based per learner interactive online technologies. And I'll show you that on a screen going forward, but they really work on mastering individual skills before moving on. And like I said, I'll touch on that in a little bit, but also for our younger students in our Spark Studio, which is anywhere from 5 and 6. And depending on the child, the 6-year-old could be in the elementary studio instead, depending on their skills, but usually would be in the Spark Studio. And it's a lot more Montessori inspired, hands-on type things with their guide. But let me touch on that in a little bit. And if I don't answer your question, let me know. We say goodbye to the one size fits all. Like I said, this is very personalized for every single child who's there. No more memorization, no more chasing grades, rows of desks. No, we don't have any desks. And teacher-led lecturing is gone. There are no teachers at Acton. So what I mean by that is, I'm trying to go to the next screen. It's being funky. Okay, there we go. So we say goodbye to those things, which means we say hello to these things, mixed age studios. So that's something that's super exciting to me, is that we're not grouping kids based on age and grade level only. So students will be in a mixed group with peers, which is super beneficial for both the younger ones and the older ones. The older ones are learning leadership. The younger ones are learning to interact with peers. I mean, think about when your child goes to play with somebody, you're not only calling friends over that are their exact same age. They have cousins and neighbors and friends that are all ages, and they all learn and play well together. And when a kid wants to know something, they're much more likely to listen to another kid explain it than a grown-up tell them the answer. So if you kind of think about that for a minute, it just makes so much sense. So instead of grades, we have badges that they earn based on when they master a skill. So you'll see that for number 3. There is no, if a student was to leave Acton and go back to a traditional school and needed a transcript, everything that they personally have learned would be a, because they do not move on from a skill until they have completely mastered it on their individual learning plans. So one 6-year-old could have earned 7 badges and be advancing grade levels on their own quest, yet this other 6-year-old may still be working on badge number 1. And that's totally fine, because like we know, they're all completely different and they work at their own pace, at their own time, to earn their badges once they master and completely understand a skill before moving on to the next one. And we use that core skills time of the day where they're doing reading and math, and we take those every day, and we have project-based learning in the afternoons, hands-on quests where we're taking the things they're learning and doing real-world skills and group projects together every day. And we actually have those set up into 6-week sessions. So every quest is 6 weeks, and at the end of every quest, there is an exhibition for family to come in and see the students present what it is they've been working on each time. So the parents are very involved there, and we use the 21st century technology to do that. And the environment is learner driven, which, like I said, there is no teacher, there are guides. And that means that the learners are completely in charge of their day. The guide is there, the grown-up is there for safety, number 1, and then to be a coach and a cheerleader, and to answer questions with more questions. So a guide through the Acton philosophy is not allowed to answer a question, cannot give a child an answer to a question. And the first time I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's a little unrealistic. But the more I've seen other Actons in action and really gotten to understand what that means. So like if little Johnny comes up and says, Miss Loper, what time are we going to lunch today? And I'm going to say, instead of saying 11 o'clock or in 30 minutes, I would respond to little Johnny and say, well, Johnny, where do you think you could find that information? Do you think the schedule might be posted somewhere in here? Do you think a buddy might know? And that's where our 3 B's come into play. So at Acton, before you come to a guide for anything, you use your brain. Do you already know the answer? Like, think of how many times your kid has asked you something they already know the answer to. Books and resources, or a buddy. And if you've gone through all of those things and you still don't know, you can come to a guide, but they will not give you the answer. They will help you discover that you can find the answer. So what's really cool is with other Actons, and they say especially in middle school, there are weeks at a time where the guide and the children almost don't interact at all. They completely are in control of their whole learning environment. They make their rules, they hold each other accountable. And all of this might seem a little far-fetched, but as soon as you dive into this Acton philosophy and see all of this in action, it starts to make so much more sense. And kids can do so much more than we give them credit for. So much more. If the child would work, this is another question. If the child would work on his own pace, they could get behind. And when the child would have to be transferred to a traditional school, they would have to go to a grade lower. So at Acton, if you needed a transcript because you were going somewhere else, we would show what the child has learned. But like I'll show you on another slide, the majority of Acton children actually progress farther because they have more time to work on things than in a traditional school setting. You know, you're doing math from 8 to 9. You're doing reading from 9 to 10. You're doing science from 10 to 11, and you have to turn on and off and switch to different subjects, and you don't get to devote the time. There's one of our co-founders of the whole Acton, Laura, has a blog, which I encourage all of you to go read. But one of them was laughing how when you say there's no homework at Acton Academy, but how often the children there want to go straight home and keep working on all of their things because they're that excited and they want to earn their badges, and they're so into it that homework is something that they choose to do a lot of the time. But like I said, I have a page about that, but I promise I'll answer the question. If I don't answer it, please ask it again. Okay, so that's what we say goodbye and hello to. And This is another video. It's shorter than the other one. This is a 2-minute clip, but the Acton philosophy is completely based around the hero's journey. So if you've ever heard of that, you kind of know what it means. And throughout this video, I apologize because if you are not already following our social media or haven't been chatting with me, we do not call the young people that are with us children, kids, or students. We call them learners, heroes on the hero's journey, or eagles, because we are the Acton Eagles. So I want you to watch this 2 minutes and then I'll explain what that means for us.
You'll always remember buying your first car, but the things that last a lifetime, like happiness, love, and confidence, you can't buy those, but you can invest in them.
Well, this
At zero price, our
is an ad.
strategic investing approach can help you build the future you imagine.
Okay, so Acton is based on the hero's journey, and here's exactly what that is for you to be able to relate.
What do Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo all have in common with the heroes of ancient myths? What if I told you they are all variants of the same hero? Do you believe that? Joseph Campbell did. He studied myths from all over the world and published a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, retelling dozens of stories and explaining how each represents the monomyth, or hero's journey. So, what is the hero's journey? Think of it as a cycle. The journey begins and ends in the hero's ordinary world, but the quest passes through an unfamiliar, special world. Along the way, there are some key events. Think about your favorite book or movie. Does it follow this pattern? Status quo, that's where we start. 1 o'clock, call to adventure. The hero receives a mysterious message, an invitation, a challenge. 2 o'clock, assistance. The hero needs some help, probably from someone older, wiser. 3 o'clock, departure. The hero crosses the threshold from his normal, safe home and enters the special world and adventure. We're not in Kansas anymore. 4 o'clock, trials. Being a hero is hard work. Our hero solves a riddle, slays a monster, escapes from a trap. 5 o'clock, approach. It's time to face the biggest ordeal, the hero's worst fear. 6 o'clock, crisis. This is the hero's darkest hour. He faces death and possibly even dies, only to be reborn. 7 o'clock, treasure. As a result, the hero claims some treasure, special recognition, or power. 8 o'clock, result. This can vary between stories. Do the monsters bow down before the hero, or do they chase him as he flees from the special world? 9 o'clock, return. After all that adventure, the hero returns to his ordinary world. 10 o'clock, new life. This quest has changed the hero. He has outgrown his old life. 11 o'clock, resolution. All the tangled plot lines get straightened out. 12 o'clock, status quo, but upgraded to a new level. Nothing is quite the same once you're a hero. Many popular books and movies follow this ancient formula pretty closely, but let's see how well The Hunger Games fits the hero's journey template. When does Katniss Everdeen hear a call to adventure that gets the story moving? When her sister's name is called from the lottery. How about assistance? Is anyone going to help her on her adventure? Hey, Mitch. What about departure? Does she leave her ordinary world? She gets on a train to the capital. Okay, so you get the idea. What do you have in common with Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo? Well, you're human, just like them. The hero's journey myth exists in all human cultures and keeps getting updated because we humans reflect on our world through symbolic stories of our own lives. You leave your comfort zone, have an experience that transforms you, and then you recover and do it again. You don't literally slay dragons or fight Voldemort, but you face problems just as scary. Joseph Campbell said, "In the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek." What is the symbolic cave you fear to enter? Auditions for the school play? baseball tryouts, love. Watch for this formula in books, movies, and TV shows you come across. You will certainly see it again, but also be sensitive to it in your own life. Listen for your call to adventure. Accept the challenge. Conquer your fear and claim the treasure you seek. And then do it all over again.
Okay, so these stories strike a chord of yearning that, we all share: adventure, identity, and meaning in our lives, even as grown-ups. Our heroes that attend Acton will watch this video often during our learning challenges and discussions. So it's important to note what our definition of a hero even is. We are not talking superhero. We describe a hero as an ordinary person who gets back up after falling down, someone who takes responsibility rather than blaming others when things get hard, and a hero shares their inner gifts to meet the needs of those around them. They return home, they rest, they wait for their next calling, and do it all over again. So knowing that the treasure isn't really the object of the quest, but the transformation that happens along the way. And so, like I said, having seen a lot of other Actons in action and watching children talk about this exact thing is super powerful, because even as a grown-up, it's hard for us to focus on the transformation as opposed to just the result at the end of things that we are striving for, or in our own learning challenges. Okay, so you've seen the why are we doing this? You've seen a little bit of the what. And so now for our last question is the how. How does this look and feel? What is it that we're building? So this is a portrait of an Acton graduate. So normally when you graduate high school, it's all about the grades and the GPA that you made. And do you know the 4 math, reading, science, history well? Yes, those things are important, but also if you have spent so much time of your childhood in such a long, like they say that kids spend more time with their teachers than they do with their family. After you've spent all that time, what else are you? What are you as a young person by the time you hit 18? So at Acton Academy, these are the things that we really focus on. We want to learn to be, learn to do, learn to learn, and learn to live. So we want to be full of purpose and motivation, full of gratitude, and really have that growth mindset about the hero's journey and being transformed. We want to be able to have good communicators. They're good at storytelling, be creative and still curious. Entrepreneurship is a big thing with Acton, and be able to set goals and then reflect on them. So I'll talk a little bit about more how we do that. Learn to learn. So a lot of times in regular school, they're learning to memorize facts and learning to take tests and pass tests and make the good grade. But is that really learning how to learn? Trial and error, failing, and being glad you're making mistakes because you know you're learning something. Do they know how to research and use their network? Think critically. And to live, obviously be built with a firm foundation. Not all Actons are Christian based, but we chose to be. Teamwork, empathy, trust, collaborating, working with other peers constantly. A lot of times in regular traditional school, it's individual based. Here, it's really about collaborating and working with all of the peers around you. So this is kind of a little bit more of a deep dive into our core skills time of the day. It is e-learning based, taking advantage of the technology that we have now that is so rapidly advancing. So you can kind of take a look there at what our elementary and middle school use during their core skills time. And to reemphasize the point of mastery, like I said, as a teacher, having been there, you have your year of your grade level and you have to teach A, B, C, D, F during that year. And whether or not the students you're teaching get it, you have to move on to the next. Okay, I still have to teach them verbs. I have to teach them adverbs. I have to teach them about the Civil War. Like, you're on to the next. Whether the kids made A's or F's on the test, you're on to the next. But at Acton, you have to master every skill before moving on. And if some kid needs a little bit longer to do that, that's okay, because then that kid is going to fully understand it when they're ready, not compared to their peers or based on their age. So we're really in the elementary studio building a very strong base system of learning and how to learn before they launch into middle school with all the real world experiences that they'll get. So these are some other Actons. You can kind of see a little bit of the core skills time right there in the middle picture. They get comfortable wherever they want to focus on their work. There's a lot of exhibitions of learning, showing off to family and friends. In entrepreneurship, we have a business fair every year that students get to work on. And then every afternoon they're using what they learned in project time. So what is a badge? You can see a few of them up there. Sending their child to Acton means that they'll develop skills that can't necessarily be quantified easily, like managing themselves, self-governance, character. So we're learning how to learn and providing the opportunities for them to dive deeply into the things that they're passionate about. Badges are just a way to showcase this work and to be proud of it. And we also have portfolios and, like I said, the exhibitions where the parents come in. So you might be thinking, okay, so with all that, what does a day at Acton look like? Socratic discussions are a really big part of our philosophy. So students will sit in circles, usually like a town hall kind of meet, and every 6-week session will launch the theme or the idea. But then also every day, twice a day, in the morning, we'll launch our idea and discuss it with each other. And this is where the students, the learners, really get very good at communicating and agreeing and disagreeing respectfully in a way that they can all understand. So it's a lot of asking questions and encouraging them to continue the conversation going, so that after a little bit of the first of the year, the students are completely doing this on their own. The leaders will kind of rise forward and start the discussions, and they all kind of collaborate together. And then at the end of the day, you have the Socratic discussion. Did you meet your goals? Did you work on your badge? Did you earn the points? What do you need to do differently? Yes, tomorrow, the next day. Shout outs, gratitude to each other, those type of things. And like I said, our sessions are 6 weeks at a time, and the students use real world quests in the afternoons to develop the skills that they are working on. It's usually science and history type activities in the afternoons. So we have dear time twice a week, drop everything and read. And this is another thing that I'm really passionate about, because it's instilling the love of reading. Instead of giving a child a book and saying, hey, this is on your level, this is what we're reading, read this book. It's all about them loving to read and learning and keeping that. As a kindergarten teacher, I got to see that spark of the excitement of, oh my gosh, I can read this sentence, and them just being fueled with excitement to read. And then in first grade, second grade, third grade, when you're having to read to pass a test, it's a lot less fun. So at Acton, during dear time, they can read a comic book, they can read a magazine, they can read an instruction manual about their new airplane model, or they can read a novel, an autobiography, whatever they are excited to read is what they get to read during that time. Also, like I mentioned before, we have chosen to be an Acton affiliate that is Christ-centered. So, we're not associated with a church, so we won't have weekly chapel, but we will be a Christ-centered environment 24/7. So besides just one day a week, we'll have our prayers before our Socratic discussions in the morning, and in the afternoon we have worship music. We'll have Bible verses and scriptures that we learn about and focus on and use to encourage each other. And then we'll have our Love Mobile project. So this isn't set in stone, but this is kind of what we're thinking for every month as part of developing character in our learners. We will have monthly outreach to focus on in Mobile to encourage compassion and to make sure our community feels loved by us. So you can kind of see there some of our ideas for year one. This is a scheduled preview of what our days will look like. Will be 8:30 to 3:30, Monday to Friday. There's a lot of research about a later start to the day and how valuable it is for kids getting up and going to school and being focused when they get there. So you can see our Socratic discussions in the morning, our core skills time, our dear time, a project time. We'll have writer workshop, and they still have the enrichment classes like music and art, sports and rec. And we'll have monthly trips to the library, the local library. We'll have some theater things going on. And like I said, you know, we're not following any set stone of rules. So if parents have other ideas for enrichment activities that they want their children to use, they're welcome to bring that to our attention or suggest something for us. You can see in green, studio maintenance. That's a big part of Acton and developing character and respect for their space. So we want this to be their second home. We want them to really feel at home. And so, like I said, they make the rules, they establish the rules, they hold each other accountable to the rules, and every day they do the cleaning of the studio. And there's all different games and ways to associate and get them motivated. And that kind of brings me back to the point of a guide. Like I said, safety first is why the adults are there, but then also they're encouraging and they're there to be game makers and provide incentive and motivation. So in order to have students successfully driving themselves and self-governing, there has to be incentive and motivating. And that's what the guides are there to do. They really kind of turn most learning things into games and get the children excited to learn and provide those incentives. So that's just a little schedule preview. We also have Friday Fun Days as part of earning your badges. And you can see some of our things planned for this first year. Students and also sometimes parents have something to look forward to on Friday Fun Day. Family field trip nights, karaoke, picnics in the park, PJs and popcorn. So like I said, keeping students motivated and excited to be there and excited to learn and earn their badges. This is just one way that we can do that. And looking ahead, we do plan to grow organically with our students into middle school and high school, which is called Launchpad with Acton. And there's some really, really exciting things going on in both of these parts of Acton. There's a lot of real world apprenticeships that students are required to do in middle and high school. And they actually seek those out as far as writing the letters of interest, making the phone calls, doing the interviews, finding their businesses here in Mobile to connect with and learn from. So, you know, my husband is always like, I wish I could have gone to an Acton, because it's by the time an Acton graduates, I think they've had 200 or more hours of apprenticeship time. So they've really gotten a feel for what it is they're passionate about and why. And you can see our calendar for this year. We do operate on an 11-month trimester, allowing for our students to have extended breaks throughout the year, maintaining their interest and shortening retention in the summer, and also encouraging family travel, because we don't see a vacation or a camp out or a family time as a break from learning. We consider that a learning opportunity, and that should be happening. And that kind of takes us into the next, where Acton's really a family experience. So it's not just your student goes and then you wish them the best of luck. It's really all encompassing for the whole family. We really cherish family involvement and feedback. There are bi-weekly anonymous surveys that go out to the learners and to the parents for feedback, because we're constantly improving and working with the group that we have. There's parent coffees. There's action reviews from the learners where we can change things up. Nothing's set in stone. We really want to be the best for each child, and there's no set of rules that determines that before we even have that child with us. And then the parents end up going on a kind of hero's journey of their own. So like I said, there's been lots of Acton videos that I've watched and just been able to get inspired by, but I just want to let you know that you would also be part of the journey. If there's something on here that I don't get to answer, we do have an FAQ page on our website that answers lots of questions. The big question for you tonight is Acton right for you, for your learner, for your family? It's not right for everybody, and that's okay. We know that this is not going to be for every child in Mobile, but we want to create our community with the right people who have the shared mindset and goal of creating a whole character of our little humans, and not basing that solely on grades and academics and memorization and passing tests, but who they are as a whole, how they communicate with each other, how they interact with each other, what type of human that they are with their empathy and compassion and ability to agree and disagree. And you really using real world skills that they would actually use by the time that they're 18 or older. And just in case you didn't know, Acton, we are an affiliate. There are over 260 Acton campuses worldwide. I think we're right now in 40 US states and 25 countries. You can see the right picture is the very first Acton 10 years ago in Austin, Texas. They had 7 learners their first year. And then this is their campus now with hundreds of learners and 260 affiliates. So at Acton, we're not just trying to come up with something on our own that we think sounds good. This is a proven model, and we have amazing leaders and resources. And at Acton, we really believe that learning to do, learning to be, and learning to learn are far more important than just learning to know. And does it work? So Acton has had learners progress 7 times above grade level because there's nothing stopping them. There's no limit. If they're ready to go, they can go. Acton learners routinely test. And like I said, when we do a test, it's just one random day where we happen to give them a paper and a pencil and a little bucket of goodies and say, all right, this is a challenge. Show us what you know. It's not something they knew was coming and they studied for. It's just an overall assessment for them. And they don't even see their grades. We see it so that we can help them, and parents can obviously see it, but it's not something we hand back and say, you passed or failed. You know, it's just to show us where they are progressing. But Acton learners routinely test 2 to 3 grade levels higher, despite not having taught to the test. And Acton has had learners accepted to prestigious universities. Yes, we've throughout the 10 years, we've had students already graduate. Some have gone on to college, some have gone on to start businesses and do other things. But most importantly, Acton heroes develop a love of learning and enjoy the process through the challenges. Yes, there will be challenges. I don't want anybody to think this is just easy breezy. Everybody just has fun all day, every day. Your student in a traditional school has the challenges of passing the test and being compared to peers and following directions well and listening to the teacher and staying quiet and sitting in the straight line in their desk. And there's just lots of things that are struggles. There's also struggles at Acton, you know, being able to set goals and focus and spend time reflecting on what you need to do differently and working with peers and governing yourself. So there's struggles. It's not a perfect place, but it definitely is the type of struggles that I'd rather my child learn, to form them into a sweet, good little human being before they hit the real world and think that everyone's just going to give them answers when they ask, but instead know that they can find the answers and that they're capable. And through their journey, through the trials and errors and failures, that they can learn and grow from that. So you've learned a lot about Acton, either through the posts that we've been sharing for the past few months, chatting with me through our individual interactions, or through this presentation. You've seen some about how our current education is failing our children. You've seen some of what an Acton education can provide instead. So now it's time for you and your family to discuss what's right for your child. And we know that's a big decision. It was for us too. Like I said, we were ready to pick up and move to Austin, Texas and go to the original campus because we knew this is exactly what our kids had to have. So I really want you to take time to think on it, pray on it, reflect on it, ask me as many questions as you need to. We do have a location as of yesterday. We signed our lease to be at Highland Park on Schillinger South. So we'll be at Schillinger and Cottage Hill right there. It's a brand new space, so we're excited to get in there and fill it up. And we will have a huge outdoor area fenced in to play, as well as a big, large, unfenced in area that we'll be able to utilize for kickball or anything like that we need. So it's a super private, nice area. And if you're not in West Mobile, I don't want you to be discouraged because, you know, personally, I'm used to driving my kids 35 minutes or more, but I would have driven my kids 3 hours to go to Acton because we're that passionate about it. And I hope that I have instilled a passion in you too. So you're welcome to drive by there and check it out. If you pull down the Highland Park Drive, it's the last one on the left back there. And from here, part of our application process is to read at least the book by our founder, Laura Sandiford, Courage to Grow. And I have copies of those for you. So if you want one, I'm happy to drop off a free copy for you. It's really inspiring and it shares a lot more. You really get some good insight and to help you make your decision. And then Unschooling Rules and Hero on a Mission are some other really great resources. So the enrollment process is number one, to fill out the Hero audition form. It's a quick little questionnaire on our website. If you've already filled that out, I will be sending our step 2 questionnaire out soon. And then after that, if everything kind of lines up for us and for you, we'll schedule a collaborative interview with you and your child or children and us. And then you can receive your invitation of acceptance and enrollment documents to hold your spot. And we are starting with a smaller number. We really want to have a core group of founding families to really start this off here on the right foot. But to encourage some of you who might be a little leery in terms of numbers, like I said, there's 260 Actons currently. There's 80 more opening this next year. And the majority of Actons open with 7 to 12 learners year one. And the majority of them have grown to 30 to 45 year 2. And then they're on waiting lists for year 3. So anybody who does jump in and is full force with me, I'm so excited. I know that it takes a lot to put yourself out there, especially with your child in mind. But I want to guarantee you that we are completely invested in this. We have skin in the game with our kids. We've opened a business before. I've been a teacher for a very long time, although this is the opposite of a teacher. We're insanely passionate about it. And we really want to find the just right community to start and be our founding families to grow this to what Mobile is going to be very excited and eager to be a part of after year 1, if not year 2 or 3. So I'm not going to play this here. It's 15 minutes, but this is our award-winning documentary called Disruptive Education. It's on YouTube and Vimeo, so I just encourage you to go watch it. And I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and hearing a little bit from my heart and a little bit more about Acton and our why. And if you're ready, you can, of course, reach out to me in any way, Facebook, Instagram, our website, audition form if you haven't filled that out for your learner, or you can email me. If you right now want to pop on and ask any questions through your video or through the chat, I'll hang around for a minute. Otherwise, thank you, and I hope to hear from you soon. And if it's not for you, that's completely understandable. It's not for everybody, but we would love for you to spread the word so that those that it is a right fit for in Mobile can get in where their child will best be served. All right, I'm going to check the questions here. What would the schedule look like for a first grader? So that scheduled preview that I showed you, the 8:30 to 3:30, a first grader, a 6, 7-year-old would be in the elementary studio. So that would be their schedule. The core skills time is around 1.5 to 2 hours a day, where they really get to spend their time focused on their individual pacing. And then every afternoon is the science and history. And also the science and history projects in the afternoon aren't just that. Like, they use writing and they use reading and they use math to figure out and work with everybody to, I mean, it's learning all day long. It's not just that one time where they do reading and math, that they use it all day. And even our writer workshops in the afternoon, they're not just learning to write an essay. Like, they're learning real world things like thank you notes and resume writing and all of that kind of stuff, even at young ages, to prepare them. The address, I think it's 5344 Schillinger Road South. It's right across from Mellow Mushroom. So Schillinger and Cottage Hill right there, Mellow Mushroom. It's directly across Highland Park. There's an urgent care right there, and you drive down past the urgent care, which is nice to have urgent care right there. And pizza, Domino's is next door. We'll have pizza every Friday. You're welcome. Thank you. Oh, and Yellowhammer's coming across the street. Coffee in the morning for our parent coffee chats. Winning. Yeah, I think it's 5344. I don't have it pulled up right now. 5344 Schillinger is what is sticking out in my head. But I will stop the recording now. And if you need a copy of the recording, let me know. There's a few people we're going to send it out to. Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll wait just a second and then I'm going to close it out. If you have another question, feel free to pop on and ask or type it in the chat box.
2344 Schillinger Road.
2344 Schillinger. 2344 Schillinger.
Unit 2C.
I'll type that in the chat. Okay, I just put our address right there in the chat box. All right, well, thank you guys. If nobody has any more questions, I'm going to stop the recording and jump off. I hope everyone has a great night, and I look forward to hearing from you guys soon. Thanks so much.